Hello and welcome to episode 89 of the Creating Crowbar podcast. Martin, you can put that glass down now, but do it gingerly, because it's the 21st of April, the day we're recording this, and my name is Chris Thurston. Today I'm joined by the aforementioned Marsh Davies.
Hi.
And Graham Smith.
Hello.
It's been an interesting week for people who cared about Star Wars a huge amount when they were children and teenagers, got through the difficult phase of realising that Star Wars was shit now, and then found themselves faced over the course of the last weekend with the proof that, well, not proof, but the suggestion that maybe by the end of this year it might not be totally shit, and perhaps we didn't waste all of our time, or if we did, we wasted it marginally less than we almost did.
Do you dare to dream, Chris? Do you dare to love again?
This was really pertinent to me yesterday when my friend Sam Roberts, editor of PC Gamer, former podcast guest, excitedly booked tickets for Star Wars Celebration next year. Star Wars Celebration was what happened in Anaheim over the weekend, where all these new trailers and things came out. The next one is in London, and people were rushing to buy tickets for it. And I almost did. I almost got caught up in that kind of, hey, let's all get Glastonbury tickets kind of hype. And then I realised that I wasn't ready to buy back in fully yet. It was like I had gotten out. And that fandom meant a lot to me for a long time. And I didn't really... I'm happy to wait to see the new film and then subsequently discover whether I regret not getting to go to Celebration the following year. I don't think I would either way, honestly, because I suspect it's going to be a lot of queuing and talking about Star Wars, which I like doing, but even I have like an upper limit. So maybe it's for the best. But, so from that event, other than the Force Awakens trailer that made everyone really happy, made me so excited I needed a glass of whiskey to sit down, there was also the proper reveal of a game that was shown off in a like absolutely fractional teaser trailer form at E3 last year, which was Star Wars Battlefront.
Maybe 2 years ago. Actually.
Yeah, it feels like it was a while ago.
I think it was. There was just the foot of an AT-AT clumping down as EA announced that they'd got the license, basically. That was it. They just announced that they got a license, which had happened 6 weeks prior or something. And
that they'd given Battlefront to DICE, basically, which was a change that made a lot of sense because most of the letters in Battlefront are the same as the letters in DICE's most famous game.
Yes.
So much to the extent that I spent a lot of today changing the word battlefield to Battlefront in rough pass versions of the magazine. Yeah, so this was it wasn't even, what the public got to see wasn't even really the first proper look at Battlefront, because it's the in-engine CGI trailer.
Yeah, it doesn't say game footage at the start of the trailer, it says game engine footage.
And Frostbite can do whatever it likes, really. Like, there's no real limit. Like, you could make your CGI trailer in Frostbite, probably, and it would still be a CGI trailer. It's just that it's not been outsourced to another studio. It's probably the major difference.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that any of the animations in that were, physicsy kind of proper game animations rather than just mocap pre-rendered.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's running on anybody's PC. It could be running on Deep Thought for as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also got, what are they called? The hover bike things?
Speeders.
It's got speeders racing through the forest in such a way that I find it difficult to imagine any player ever actually doing in a multiplayer server without just bouncing off the trees kind of thing.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is that reportedly the stuff that was then shown to game journalists separately, the kind of in-game footage, was again not a playable thing. It was a pre-recorded, playthrough by a developer, but it was obviously staged to mimic certain key action beats from that trailer.
Oh, right.
Which is part of the marketing process, and you kind of reserve judgment at this point until someone's actually played the thing. But it's enough to say that I guess the things you see in the trailer are all indicative of
an interaction.
Game mechanics. Right. So that shield dome that the Rebel throws up. Yeah. The fact that the way you take down an AT-ST is by jetpacking it up to it and firing a rocket, calling down an airstrike from Y-wings, that kind of thing. Being able to be Darth Vader are all things that are in that game. What do you guys think of the trailer, though?
I was prepared to think it was going to be a whole load of hot guff, but actually by the end of it, I was quite excited. I want to shoot things down. Those flying vehicles that Rich McCormick would probably be very angry that I can't remember the name of.
It does soar with John Williams' score, and the camera does zoom out fast from the docking bay of a larger spaceship with lots of little spaceships, which is the best thing to do with little spaceships.
It is, yeah. Honest. Put them in a bigger spaceship.
Yeah, and then put them out.
Yeah, I would say though, of all the things that the Star Wars universe brings, like the Battlefield / Battlefront kind of fantasy isn't something that I'm particularly excited by. Like, I mean, watching the actual cinematic trailer made me feel a lot more yearning for an RPG set in one of those kind of large, melancholic desert landscapes with a giant crashed starship in the background. You know?
Yeah, Battlefront's always been a bit of a strange fish because it's got a really passionate following, and I think because it was genuinely inventive, like regardless of setting, it was a genuinely inventive way of doing large scale multiplayer.
Sure.
But like the presence of jetpacks and rocket launchers and portable shield generators are all things that don't really have a place in the original trilogy. Like they're very Clone Warsy, they're very prequel trilogy ish things. Even though LucasArts seems to be really consciously distancing themselves from the prequels now and how they present things, just as the prequels look like video games, when you try and turn the battles from the original trilogy, like the Battle of Endor, into a game, you add in lots of gamey things, like, rocket launchers, for example, where, like, I don't think there's a single example of one in the original trilogy. Similarly, magic shield bubbles are kind of beyond the pale of the special effects at the time. So, and also because they involve characters like Boba Fett or Darth Vader running around on the ground in huge pitched battles. That's something you simply never see in the films. Like, the films are really concentrated on, like, 2 or 3 characters going and doing one thing that takes down an entire Star Destroyer or an entire space station or something. It's always like little groups of people doing huge things. It's never, pitched battle between massive armies. Until you get to the prequel trilogy. Yeah. We don't talk about that.
No. Yeah, it's funny actually, you pick out something there that I didn't realise but was probably my main bugbear with all the Star Wars games thus far, have been that they do have these little kind of gimmicky things like, enemies that have shields and, things that look like lightsabers but aren't lightsabers in the, what's it called? The Force Unleashed series. You fight things that are sort of pseudo-Jedis because they have swords that can block your lightsaber, but they aren't really lightsabers. But they have all these mechanics, but actually the only thing that really any game needs to deliver on is the power of the Force and telekinesis. And like, none of the games really do that. Like, the Force Unleashed does it in really canned ways, which are totally inconsistent throughout the course of that game. And I like probably the best games for it are the Jedi Knight games by Raven, which have a really solid kind of core combat loop where you do have certain force powers, but they never go kind of full Anakin with those powers in the way that they could. But you kind of want that. Like, I mean, we can do it just about now with the technology we have.
Well, I mean, I want that, but I would still be very happy if Battlefront was a game that didn't have the Force in it at all. Because, sure. I mean, there are massive pitched battles that star the kind of main characters in the original trilogy, but I really like the Battle of Hoth or the end of Return of the Jedi, where you have battles happening at multiple different scales at the same time. So you've got down on Endor, you've got Han Solo and the Ewoks battling against the AT-STs to try and turn off the shield or whatever, while you've also got a battle going on in space with Lando Calrissian and Millennium Falcon. And what's cool about Battlefront is the same thing that's cool about the Battlefield games, which is that you take these battles that are happening on multiple different scales at the same time and you put them in the same game. And Battlefield has actually sort of moved away from that a little bit with recent iterations. It's become more about just ground combat, whereas, Battlefield 1942, you had, people on the ground and jeeps and tanks, but then you also had the planes, but then you also had the carrier ships off the coast and that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of I like the idea of a Star Wars set game where you can take off from your spaceship in space and fly down onto a planet and transition different levels of battles.
They have said that there won't be space combat.
Have they?
Yeah. So there won't be space combat. There will probably be vehicular flight, because it's really heavily implied in the trailer where you see the cockpit of an X-Wing. However, the game mode that seems to be implied in the beginning of the trailer is, I think, called Walker Assault, which is where the Empire has a NPC AT-AT that they have to try and get to. It sounds like enemy territory, actually. They have to get to the rebel base, and the rebels can destroy it by calling in an NPC airstrike. So those Y-wings you see in the trailer are not players. That's a kind of scripted thing. So there's that.
I'm not a fan of that idea.
Graham says no to that idea.
I want to fly them myself. Why the fuck do
But
I?
they haven't.
Like,
They haven't 100% confirmed that that'll be always the case. There might be other modes where you can, but like.
Because the thing is, like,
I'd
dice.
be amazed if you know, that trailer so heavily implies that you'll be able to fly the ships over Hoth that if you can't, then there would be a class action lawsuit against EA.
Yeah,
Well,
if
I mean,
you can't
like-
clothesline an AT-AT, then it's not a Star Wars game, really.
Exactly.
my concern is that these things become Battlefield's equivalent of kill streak rewards. You kill 4 guys in a row, you can now call in the Millennium Falcon kind of thing.
It's probably more likely to be you've killed 4 guys in a row, you can now beat Darth Vader.
Yeah, but that's kind of just sort of seems
Shit.
a little bit.
Well, it's too early.
like-
though.
They can't do that. Like, it's Battlefield. Like, they already have games in which you fly around in planes.
Battlefront, Marsh.
I know, but like, in Battlefield, you can do all this stuff. It would be very, very
madness
weird
if you
they
couldn't.
Yeah.
The
I guess Battlefield 2142 also is a sci-fi game which has, smaller than ATSTs, but it has walkers that you can stomp around in, mechs, and it's even got spaceships hovering above cities that you can fly up to, land on, run inside, blow up their core in order to, win a particular game mode. Running off the side of that ship just before it blows and parachuting over the side. They've already made the game that they need to make.
And actually the community already made a really great Star Wars mod for 2142.
Yeah.
So, I think, I don't know, obviously that's just too early to call because they really haven't said very much at all about what the other modes might be or how it all fit together. The one thing that, and it came out of what our guy saw was that, how Battlefield has squads and you can always spawn on your squad leader. In this you have partners, and I think it's squads of 2 basically that you always have a buddy and you can spawn on each other. And that seems like it might gesture towards like the kind of, I guess, where the point of view usually is in a Star Wars movie, which is 1 or 2 or maybe 3 people sticking together amid this chaos. The other thing I liked about the trailer, and it sort of reflects something that's happening generally, I think, in their changing approach to Star Wars, is when the AT-AT explodes, it really looks like a firecracker inside a cardboard box, like it does in The Empire Strikes Back, where it looks like practical, even though it's obviously like they can do whatever they want with Frostbite.
It's a retro effect.
Yeah, it's almost like a retro effect done in a modern engine. Like the shield dome could be out of Halo. Like that's 100% modern
Naboo.
video games. Yeah, no, it really could be Naboo. Shit. But
Go on.
but that one moment is like we kind of looked at how a AT-AT falls over, how it explodes, and it explodes like this.
Yeah, nostalgia for crummy old special effects is an interesting kind of new trend. I'm being harsh in saying they're crummy, but a nostalgia for physical effects is long overdue, actually, in terms of the special effects industry.
It's been really heartening to see that the new Star Wars film, they use a lot of physical effects.
Yeah.
Anytime you've seen kind of a...
They actually crashed that Star Destroyer into the desert.
Yeah,
It's,
through the sand up the side of it. But, anytime there's been little kind of behind the scenes things of J.J. Abrams talking on set, it's always been quite pointedly, like have a puppet alien walk behind him and stood in front of some sort of spaceship thing that you can actually see, so it's not CG.
They
Makes
revealed
me
that the little
happy.
ball droid was real. That was fucking nuts.
Wow. That issue rolls by itself independently. Wow.
It works.
Cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a little man inside.
No, it doesn't. We're a very little man. It's actually really small. But they brought it on stage during because they brought R2-D2 on from the film, and I was like, they expect that to work because that is just a little guy they put in a bin on wheels. But then they also brought on BB-8, who's the new one, the ball droid, and it works. It's a bit more ungainly in real life than it looks in the film, but it really is a practical effect. I think that was a deliberate kind of, because there were a lot of people in the Star Wars community saying that one shot in the original trailer of that ball droid was proof that it was the prequels all over again. It was proof that it was going to be a load of CGI bullshit. Because it's like, this is obviously bollocks, like that wouldn't work, but apparently they made it work, so. I don't know how. But because that's real, it means the rest of Star Wars is real, obviously.
Yes.
Yes.
And I can go live there now.
Well, presumably you'll be able to buy that thing at Christmas.
Oh shit, yeah. Sorry, I forgot what this was all really about.
See, my great concern with the films is that it comes out and it's not shit, it's not terrible, but it's just a movie, and a bunch of people go and see it and go, that was good, but it's just a film. And so the thing that's changed isn't Star Wars, but them. Because that seems like a much greater crushing blow to your life. You've spent your whole time devoted to this thing.
I think you underestimate the level of self-delusion that people
I'm no
will be
longer
able to...
naive. This is why this isn't as
I
good
think you
anymore.
underestimate how badly the prequels fucked over people who cared about that universe. Like, I ended up saying this when the trailer came out, but like, they could just release a pretty bog-standard Star Wars story that looks nice and doesn't get anything particularly wrong, as you say, a film. And that would be a fucking triumph compared to what they've managed in the last decade, or decade and a half. Like, this is my rebuttal to anyone saying that J.J. Abrams, it has an inconsistent track record, he can't handle it. Like, Star Wars isn't difficult. There's not a difficult formula to get right in order to evoke people's fond memories of it, or make people care. It's full of really great iconography. What you don't do is fuck every single part of it up individually and collectively. Like, and I think he's smart enough not to do at least that.
I agree with that. I just think there's a bunch of people that think that the reason that they don't love Star Wars with the passion that they did when they were younger is because George Lucas fucked up the prequels. And I think they're going to go watch this thing and maybe realise that that's not the case. They don't love it with the fervour they once did because they're not the age they once were.
It's like the fantasy character who will never discover that the village they grew up in was shit because raiders burned down the village.
Yeah.
That's not a great analogy, but
you can never go home.
You can't, but you can pay money to feel like a child.
Infantilise me.
Exactly.
Please. J.J. Abrams saved my childhood?
No. Too late for that now. But what we can have is a cool Millennium Falcon chase.
Yeah!
Exactly.
That was a pretty rad trailer, though.
It was. Graham.
Yep.
I believe you, like me, have been revisiting your childhood. Ish. We're playing Grand Theft Auto.
I have.
Formative game, I think.
Well, Grand Theft Auto, the original, was an 18-rated game, as you would expect. And there was a new game shop that had just opened up in the town I grew up in Scotland. The first time the town I grew up in had ever had a dedicated game store. Closed down after about 4 months. Not a lot of people playing games in this little town. But while it was there, I went along to try and buy Grand Theft Auto because I think I'd read about it in a magazine. And was told by the lady in the shop that I couldn't because it was an 18. And at the time I was 12? I don't remember now. So I got my mum to come along with me and buy it for me, and I don't think she realised what it was. So,
my very similar story, I think, although I was 10, so, yeah. I think my mum got it for me on the way home from work.
It was a formative experience of some sort.
Yeah.
I feel somewhat guilty about not explaining to my mum better what this game was, because I knew why it was an 18.
Yeah, you should buy this for me. It's going to corrupt me.
I remember thinking that the most scandalous thing I'd ever seen in a video game was the bit in the original Grand Theft Auto where you get what would be now known as a sext, but at the time was simply a sexy page from a character that's heavily implied to be Lara Croft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is the most, which is probably the most cumulative 90s lad gaming gag you'll ever get.
There's something great about the fact, just alone, that game had pagers in it, and then you had to go to telephone booths.
Yeah, the iconography of all those games from the 90s just don't make any sense to people born today, I think.
No. Like, running over Hare Krishnas to get a bonus.
Yeah.
Like, you think about where GTA started and where it ended, and like how in some ways it's moved absolutely unfathomable distances in technology and expense and everything else, and in some senses it still has a big building with the word ball sack on it.
Yeah, Bossack. Because it's Scottish.
It's parody in it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of parody in that game. A lot of satire.
We were talking about it today, like, in GTA 5, in some ways it's making exactly the same jokes they've been making the entire time. We were having a discussion about, like, whether it's... Because if you go back and actually listen to, like, the radio stations from GTA 3, like, the first, like, Laszlo stations and stuff like that. Was that the first Laszlo station?
I think Laszlo was mentioned in the original game, wasn't he? But he would have been voiced, I guess, until maybe GTA 3.
Even then, like, the the jokes are the same. You can actually probably pick up that MP3 and drop it into GTA 5 and it would probably still work, although parts of it are a bit dated. Like, which is not to say that it isn't, some of the kind of, the GTA humor is still funny. It kind of is. It's just kind of interesting that one part of it, like, absolutely nothing has changed at all. Like, how can we get a dick reference into this, or make fun of hillbillies for the nth time in that series?
It just feels so scattershot to me. I know this is not a particularly original thought, but anytime I hear people defend GTA, satire is the kind of get out of jail free card that they deploy to justify anything in the game that you think is crappy or shitty or troublesome. And it's just, I don't think most of it is satire, and if it is satire, then it's shit satire. And I'm not sure satire works if you're just targeting everything. I think satire has to have a pretty clear target, and satirizing two opposite things within 5 minutes of each other is just, what I end up feeling when I play GTA, and I like GTA 5, I should say, but what I end up feeling is that it just hates or mocks anyone who believes in something. Like, it's a really nihilistic game experience. Because if you like yoga, then you get taken the piss out of. If you believe in commercialism and capitalism, you get taken the piss out of.
If you believe in the opposite, you get taken the piss out of.
Every end of every spectrum just gets taken the piss out of. And the only people who get any kind of sympathetic portrayal are its stars, and it's the kind of main player characters. And they're always just
heinous?
And empty and sort of lost for the fact that they're empty. And then it's like, well, surely then believing in something would be good. But no, those are even worse. You don't even get to see the world from their point of view.
It's an attitude that, like, the only other place I really associate it with, like, a certain kind of, like schoolyard bullying that might even be British specific schoolyard bullying, which is the kind of like it's sort of like every single thing is like, how do we add the tone to the concept of a bank? You know what I mean? This is a billboard. It could say literally fucking anything on it, but how do we make it say like it's that, and that, I mean, it either sinks into the background. Sometimes it genuinely works and it feels kind of punky and cool, and I think that's probably what they've been going for all these years. And sometimes it's just like, oh, come on, guys, that's just a picture of a dick.
Was the kind of, I think we talked about this in the pod before, but there was an era of British games in the early to mid 90s, which I think were very inspired by things like Viz. A sort of mixture of Viz, Private Eye, and 2000 AD. And I think Private Eye is sometimes what it aspires to be, and it never really gets there. It's always Viz. And
Don't know, Conkers was the height of satire.
Well, there's the 2000 AD kind of thing, taking a comic, cartoony thing and just peppering it with violence and dick jokes. But still, really pretty to walk around and stuff. I like taking the photos and swimming.
Going back to the yoga thing, like that's a really good example of GTA being GTA. Just to return to the point of its writing for a bit, because like we talked about this a bit last week, but I know we have different experiences of the actual mechanics of playing the campaign in some ways. But like I hadn't actually gotten to that sequence when I talked about it last week, which is, this is not really a spoiler, a sequence where Michael, the retired bank robber in the middle of a midlife crisis, gets into an argument with his wife, who is not presented sympathetically, even though she probably should be, because her husband is a total asshole. She's presented as this sort of like bored, vapid Beverly Hills housewife sleeping with the tennis coach kind of thing. And then she's got this new yoga instructor who's this, French guy called Fabien, who's all kind of new agey or whatever. And obviously Michael sees him as a threat. And but the mission is just do yoga with them, and you go and do yoga, and it's just a series of button inputs. And his wife even remarks like, Michael, this is the first time you've ever taken interest in my hobbies. And I don't think it's intended to be sincere, but the game almost gets to a point where something actually nice happens between them, or like it does express just a brief understanding for why people might do this. You know, yoga might actually fucking help this guy. You know, he's got so many stress issues.
Yeah.
You know, like it almost. And actually, I would argue that there were periods in Rockstar's storytelling, in like Red Dead Redemption or GTA 4, or maybe even Bully, where they would let that scene play out totally straight, where it would just be like, and now Michael has just has an encounter with his wife, and actually discovers that the yoga teacher, even though he seems like a bit creepy, is actually a good guy, and is going to like, because the yoga teacher even says like, Michael, I'm concerned about you, you seem really stressed. And there's just a moment where it seems like the game might let that moment hang and give you something to think about. Like maybe Michael's...
Well, it totally does happen in Red Dead Redemption. There's a long sequence where you're just working the family farm.
I was going to mention that.
Well,
this is your redemption.
Yeah, maybe
that's there for the taking, but you don't.
And so what GTA then immediately does is have a thing where it's all nice and it looks like it's going to be fine, and then his wife goes down into like a downward dog position or whatever, and the French guy starts very suggestively like humping her from behind, and Michael is enraged and he flies into a rage and like falls into a swimming pool, and it's all hilarious, like zoom white kazoo, and we're out. Like it manages to take the sequence, which almost manages to have some meaning, and then sort of back away from it, like, oh no, of course the French yoga teacher is gross. Of course this is all about sex, really.
Lol.
Like that's, and then it's like that sequence, like the best bit in Red Dead Redemption, which is when you say when John Marston's working the McFarlane Ranch, and there's a thunderstorm and the herd is spooked and it's running towards a cliff, and you just have to ride ahead of the herd and kind of get it back into the ranch. Not because there's like an immediate danger, but because if you lose the herd, the ranch is doomed. So it's not like, bandits are going to blow up the bridge or whatever. It's just, get out ahead of the herd. And it's this really kind of, and it just allows the atmosphere to speak for itself, the rain and the prairie and the rest of it. And the idea that John Marston has all these skills, but maybe they can be put to a use that isn't gunning people down all the time. And the moment is played completely straight. If that moment was in GTA 5, one of the ranch hands would be like, I'm going to marry me a cow, and then like riding around like in the background just to make sure it knew that you weren't going to get accidentally roped into feeling something momentarily. Like,
do you think it's fear that the audience doesn't think that feeling things is cool?
It comes off that way. Like it certainly comes off like, well, feelings are for losers, which is actually like more or less one of the themes of the game. Is our feelings for losers.
Do you think that that's just true the fifth installment though? Because I didn't really get that impression.
No, I don't think that's true of 4.
Right.
I think that's new. Like
it's gone from pessimism to nihilism.
Definitely,
That's
yeah. I mean, yeah, because 4 has an explicitly romantic plot.
Everything is terrible in 4. Like everything's there is corrupt and ludicrous in some way, but you feel like that's critical. They're pointing at this stuff and saying the world shouldn't really be like this.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be better.
But also there are people underneath that horribleness.
Yeah,
like
who are suffering.
The McCreary crime family who you kind of get really entangled with. They're kind of like, they're a bunch of brothers and they come off as brothers genuinely in the cutscenes where you see them. Whereas actually there's a crime family full of brothers out in the countryside in GTA 5, and they're just comedy hillbillies, and of course there's 15 brothers because hillbillies lol. And it's like...
There's a single mission and you kill them all.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I feel like the problems of GTA 5 are very similar to the problems GTA has always had. Because GTA 4 introduces you to Nico as quite a sympathetic character, and there is a kind of a pessimism to it, yeah, sure, and there's a romance to it, sure. But the mechanics of it still, I feel, betray that within 10 hours. Because although it feels like at first everything is terrible and we're critical of that, and look, isn't it horrible that this impoverished man is drawn into this life of crime in a way that he can't escape. Within those first 5 to 10 hours, you've got a bank account with huge amounts of money in it, and then you're still committing crimes against oftentimes other impoverished immigrants for people that you and your character hate for no other reason than the mechanics of the game demanded. And at that point, I lose all sympathy for Niko Bellic. And the same thing happens in GTA 5. And it doesn't have that same thing of someone coming to this country who's an immigrant, who's poor and that sort of stuff. I mean, a little bit with Franklin, but even then, not so much. But I feel sympathy for them in the beginning, that the story does a less good job of maintaining, but that the mechanics almost instantly betray.
I think that definitely is an issue with 4. However, I think, and maybe you could look at 4 and go, is it really even worth trying the more human storytelling stuff? given that it's so undermined by the structure and mechanics of the game. However, on balance, I think it is still worth doing. Because...
Well, they were the first people to really do it. As we said last week, like, it was GTA 4 that created that dissonance, really. Before that, nobody in games was really talking about that kind of problem between narrative and gameplay, because there was just not that kind of level of...
narrative.
Sophisticated attempt at seriousness, within something as large budgeted as GTA was.
And that's what I mean. Like, I would rather have some of the heart back, even if it was sometimes undermined by the game, rather than having total nihilism, which is also sort of undermined by the game. It actually goes in a different direction. Like, so my subsequent complaint about GTA's campaign that I didn't voice last week is how aggressively linear and prescriptive it is. Its most set-piece moments, even the ones where it's ostensibly giving you a fair bit of power, there are some standout moments where it does give you a fair amount of freedom, but there are so many where it's like, here's a spectacular thing, please press forwards, please shoot now, please do it in this exact way because this is how this has to go. And so, given, even, you can say it goes the other way in that sense, where it's like, this is a game where everyone's an asshole, nothing anyone believes means anything, nothing anyone does means anything. And if it doesn't matter what I believe or do, because this is California and, fuck everything, then why does it matter that I fucked up this instant fail stealth?
Yeah, it's true. It's that, like, they care too much about the integrity of their...
thing that doesn't have integrity.
Structure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even the heists, I think, in the single player are reportedly a lot more linear than they are in multiplayer. That's what I've...
Inevitably, by virtue of the fact that multiplayer is designed for 4 people to do, and therefore you can't just have... and now all 4 of you have to snipe this man. It does have, like, stealth sequences, but you're given the full set of tools and a wide environment to use them in.
But you'd think it would be easier for them to implement that freedom within a single-player game than it would be in a multiplayer game.
You'd think, yeah.
But they just didn't do that. They spent money making it more linear with cutscenes and, very prescriptive fail states and things. And
it's... I agree with you in terms of the criticism of the linearity, but I feel like at least GTA 5, the reason that it's linear is in its single player is that very often it's creating bespoke kind of set pieces that you could not easily create on your own through the multiplayer. And I feel like GTA 4 doesn't do that. Like, for the lion's share of GTA 4, you're doing quite small, crummy things. Whereas GTA 5's missions are more often you're chasing your boat down the motorway at high speed, trying to catch your son as he's hanging off the mast. You're stealing a submarine and sailing about under the ocean. You're skydiving. You're flying a helicopter while lowering down another character on a rappel rope so that he can abseil down the side of a building and shoot people in through the window and grab someone out of the room and pull back and that sort of stuff. Like, that's the reason it's linear, as opposed to GTA 4, where you spend a lot of time just driving A to B, shooting some people and punching people up. GTA 5 has an awful lot of that stuff as well, but certainly there are big missions which feel like, action movie set pieces, as opposed to just drive a bit, hide behind this thing, shoot some people.
For sure. I think, like, the point where it started to jump out at me was there are set pieces which are like that. They're set up to be these spectacular moments of, like, action that would be very difficult to do. Flying a crop duster into the cargo bay of a moving cargo plane is one of them. And a lot of them end in forced fails that are enforced by the plot to set up the next mission.
Yeah.
And that becomes, I think, the bigger issue in some ways. Like, obviously doing something rote over and over again is boring, but, like, there's a lot of times where GTA 5 plays the didn't end that way card, which is, it's almost like bad GMing. It's like, the character takes over the plane and does the thing, but then something else happens, which means that, the plane has to go down in the water now, which means that we have to do the next mission is a scuba diving mission. And then there's another reason why you don't get the score or whatever, and it's like, it's a card you can only play so many times, and it plays it so often that I think it highlights its linearity, or at least its dedication to certain kind of set-piece moments.
It does it a lot at the end of missions, where you do the thing, and once you've done it successfully, the post-mission cutscene says, nah, you gotta give that back.
Yeah.
Or the FIB,
example of that.
The FIB turn up and just say, we're taking all the money. Which I wonder if it's an attempt to move away from the other problem, which is that it no longer makes sense for these people to do the crimes they don't seem to like doing when they're fabulously wealthy. And so you dangle this carrot of money in front of them and then say, nah, you don't really get that, you only get a little bit.
I think, yeah, but that is explicitly putting the needs of the narrative above the needs of the player to feel like they're making progress or achieving things.
Yeah.
Which I think, so this moves on to something we talked about briefly on Friday, but like, that maybe differs in our kind of appreciation of it, where I didn't really like the impact of the 3 character switching in the open world on the campaign, because in addition to the game having that problem with not really allowing you to feel like you're progressing, it then splits that lack of progression over 3 different tracks, 3 different sets of resources that operate at different levels. Different characters have different amounts of money available to them. And it leads to feel like you're kind of, picking who you want to role play in a situation where no one's really the right choice. At least that's how it kind of came off to me. Particularly when, like, there's nothing I can go on. I can't just, I can't pick up Franklin and improve Franklin's situation by working on him for a bit. In a different experience for the characters, because that's all gated by the story. To the extent that, like, with every single character, I'm still using the cars they start with, because they each have a personal vehicle that you can never permanently lose. So it's the only one that makes sense to upgrade. So you might as well stick with that vehicle forever, because, why use anything else? So I play Franklin a lot because I like his car more, but it's basically, it's gone from being Grand Theft Auto, a game that's about, you express your advancement to the end game by the fact that you've got this garage full of banshees or whatever, to being, Franklin's car is now black and white and has purple lights underneath it.
See, I guess I was never playing a Grand Theft Auto game for any kind of sense of progress, or not that so strongly that I feel like that's lost by Grand Theft Auto 5. Like, I still feel like Franklin, I think, is probably the character I like most, and so I still feel happy when he, relatively early on in the game, gets a big nice house and gets to move out of the house he was sharing with his aunt. My problem is, as I was saying before, the fact that his story then continues past that point, where rather than taking the at least $250,000 you have at the bank at that moment and going to school or doing anything else he wants in his great mansion, he continues to kill people and do crimes.
Yeah, and complain about it as well.
Yeah, which is sort of the problem with most of them. Michael, a little bit better for that, because he's excited by the fact that he's doing crime, at least at the start, until the FIB turn up, and then he's doing crimes he doesn't want to be doing.
The bad crimes, not the good crimes.
But I like the switching mechanic, because I feel like part of the problems that GTAs have had before, that the narrative dissonance that we were just talking about.
Nope, sorry. There we go.
Is that it drives you to kind of boredom, and when you're bored, you fuck stuff up. You kind of break the rules and the internal logic of the world by just blowing everything up. The integrity of the world slips away a little bit until you get killed or arrested. And in either situation, you just leave either the police building or the hospital with very little punishment afterwards. And the world is depleted or wasted in some way by that experience, I think. And being able to switch between the characters and say, you know what, I'm bored of doing Michael's shit at the moment, I'm going to go do Franklin's shit for a little while, I think is a nice way of switching up the pace of the game a little bit, and stops the problem you get in most games, and especially in open world games, which tend to be 30, 40, 50 hours long, of just this single character has this impossible life experience where they just, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and in a way that they're not really people, Whereas, when the Grand Theft Auto games are quite clearly aspiring to cinema or television, then I think this does a much better job of that, of, hey, this scene's done, this character's plot is coming to a kind of lull, let's skip over to someone else, and we'll cut back to Michael later on. And I like the little storytelling stuff it does as well, because depending on where you are in the plot, when you switch to the characters, you get a little vignette of what's happening in their life when you drop in on them, and those vignettes are dictated by where you are in the plot, and they actually do quite a lot of work in relating character arcs and stuff like that. So like if you switch over to Michael at the point where all his family have moved out of his house, for example, you get a particular image of him as a lonely man going through a nervous breakdown, sleeping in his clothes with a gun under his pillow and that sort of stuff.
Did you ever switch to Trevor and find him naked in the desert, surrounded by other dead naked people?
I've never had that one.
Have you
No.
done the one where you switch to Trevor and it's really, really heavily implied that he's sexually assaulted the person he's living with?
No.
Because they're crying in the bed next to him when he wakes up.
Christ.
Yeah, I was going to as a rebuttal because I switched to this character like, I'm going to go do some Trevor stuff, and then I was like, now I'm going to walk into the sea.
It's the
fuck this game.
I fucking hate Trevor. I mean, the first time you're introduced to him, he's, cuckolding someone who he then stamps to death.
Not just anyone either, but that's.
Trevor in general is horrible, but I quite like Franklin and Michael most of the time.
Trevor gets all the best lines, which is kind of the cruel thing about it. That
yeah, that pisses me off as well because the game
it gives him wit. Like, it gives his redeeming feature is wit. Like, he's this violent sociopath who's basically an irredeemable knobend in every possible way, apart from the fact that he gets given all the good one-liners. They're not his because he's not real. They're given to him by the scriptwriter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in order to kind of make you go like, "Oh, Trevor," and that's the response it wants from you every time, and it'll push it like going further and more extreme with everything he does to try and on the assumption that you've gotten through so far by going, "Oh, Trevor," rather than "I have to do this," so I'm going to keep pressing this button.
It always seems like an indication that the writers really liked Trevor. I mean, you get that sense in TV shows sometimes where the horrible asshole character that in real life would, not be successful and would be shunned by society for being a terrible asshole. Things kind of come up roses for them and characters hang around with them inexplicably. House is a good example of that. Like, why does Dr. House have any friends or a job? Past halfway through season 1, he would have been fired long ago and everyone would have abandoned him. But the show can't have that happen, so it has to keep going, and you get to the point where the writers are constructing a universe around this single character so that things work out in their favour, and it makes it kind of insufferable to watch because it just seems like the writers love this character. Look how smart and funny he is. And it's the same thing with
Trevor. And now we're toying with your affection. No.
It's the same thing with Trevor, where it depicts his heinous crimes in much the same tone as it depicts his one-liners. His jokes are the same as the way often he kills people.
Yeah, under a different light, what he does would be categorised as bants, and that's why it's so irritating, I think.
But do you think that Trevor's heinousness is a cipher for the player? I mean, that was one of the things that came out in a lot of the reviews, like, oh, Trevor's, they've overcome the ludonarrative dissonance because they've got a character who is just as psychopathic as players are. I
know, because they give him this philosopher edge. Like, he's not always supposed to be right about everything. But like, he does so much eulogy, like he does so much monologuing about like the internally correct philosophy he has that allows him to do these things. And there are moments where it almost works, I think. Like what he does immediately after the kind of now infamous torture sequence is kind of a weird internally coherent for him.
What does he do?
Decision. I don't want to spoil it for people. But he.
Are you talking about? Is he rueful? I don't remember him being rueful.
He does something nice immediately after having done something completely shit to a guy, and he has internally coherent reasons for just swinging between extremes like that. But that's what I think punctures that idea that Trevor is this id character that you give the player in order to just express themselves, because Trevor has reasons for doing what he's doing, and they're not the player's reasons, because and they're not supposed to be good reasons, but I don't think the assumption of the player that just wants to go out and blow up stuff with a rocket launcher isn't expressing a worldview in doing that. They're playing a video game.
But in terms of kind of making that behaviour work within the pre-existing fiction, I suppose that's how they.
It's as close as you're going to get, but I still don't think the comparison holds. Given that now in the full PC release of the game, the character wheel has 4 options on it, and the 4th one is your multiplayer character. The multiplayer character is the one that is the expression of your id.
Right.
That is the one that is there for that. They're a silent protagonist who does whatever the fuck you want them to do, and who shrugs gamely at whenever they're told to do something, and they go off and do whatever the fuck they want, and everything is optional. Because everything in the single, apart from a few tutorial things, you just have to do whatever the fuck you want. I think it undermines Trevor's role a bit. If that was Trevor's role when the game was released and people reviewed just the single player, I don't think it is. I think that's why that's the 4th option. I think that's why you don't have to go to the menu to select multiplayer, where you just pull up the character wheel and you pick your multiplayer guy, and it zooms you across the sky and you're dumped into a different server.
Yeah, and the introduction to that character is it's a new arrival in town,
On a
touching
plane.
down on a plane.
It's GTA 3.
It's a GTA 3 character, basically, that you can fly in.
I was going to say, like, despite the fact that we've now kind of, like, you can attack the game on this ground, I think, forever. But, like, it still manages, I gave it a really high score because it still manages to be, like, one of the most extraordinary technical accomplishments I think I've ever seen in a game.
Yeah.
And it so much is what you make of it when you leave the campaign alone. That, like today, I wanted to do something I hadn't done before, so I decided to spend, just in the multiplayer mode, an entire sort of day and night doing whatever I wanted, but only using the first-person camera. And the first-person camera in the game is extraordinary. Like, it has an equivalent, maybe jankier in places, physical presence to any great first-person game you can think of. Better in most cases, because the world is built to one-to-one scale with the characters. It doesn't feel like a first-person game in that regard. And everything is incredibly physical, and you can see your hands, you can see your body. The emotion engine animations that accompany the 3D ragdolling models in the third person also apply to the first person. It has the most realistic falling over in a game. And that really makes a difference. Like, falling off, like, I'm used to tumbling down or being wounded or stuff in first person in games, but GTA, like, makes me feel ill. Like, I bought a high-powered motorbike and I was just driving it out through, having a great time, weaving through traffic, but feeling nervous, like passing a big truck. Like, genuinely nervous, because it's huge and it can wipe you out, and it's really not nice to fall off your bike. Like, it's really a lot like falling off a bike is. And obviously, you know, like, it's like that presence thing people talk about with VR, like, it really, really gets you. And the experience was amazing. Like, I stuck up a liquor store out in the desert in first person and, like, backed off and if I wanted to, I could shout at the guy to get him to fill the bag faster. In real life, I was in an office, so I didn't. But then, like, you know, backed off with the gun still trained on him, knowing roughly where the door was. And I hear the jingle as I push out through the door, and then turn and run, get on my bike, and I drive off and I lose the police by driving down the train tracks, but the rumble in the pad is tuned to the bumping of the slats on the train track because the attention to detail is that high. And you just sink into it, like, and the sun's setting, and it's like, I've never ever played a game that's done anything close to that before. And then, like, I jumped a red light on my bike and I got hit by a car coming the other way, and it was fucking horrible. Like, honestly, if I owned a motorbike, I would drive it more safely, having had the experience of driving it badly in GTA, because it just makes you feel like, holy shit, I'm vulnerable on this thing. I mean, it's crazy. Like, that feels so different that the idea that it comes from the same executable as this other game is nuts to me.
It's a rare situation where you can see the money on screen. Because there's lots of open world games, but none of them feel like just the amount of detail. The fact that you can, E on the keyboard is just a context sensitive use button, and you use it for, you know, panels during missions and stuff like that. But if you just walk up to an NPC and press it, your character, whoever you're controlling at that point, will say something to them, will ask them a question, and the pedestrians as they're walking around will sometimes respond, and sometimes it's just a short hello, but sometimes if you say, hey, how are you, is Michael, they'll respond with a little line about their lives and what's going on and what their job is and stuff like that. Like,
I'm a binman! They'll yell. Like a real person.
I played like 30, 40 hours of this on 360 and never realised that I could do that, but because it's E on a keyboard when I'm walking around in first person, I just do that a lot. That's just great. That's just the whole...
It's just fucking nuts. Like, there's so many moments where you can't process how much work has gone into it.
It's a commitment to this world as a simulation. And there aren't really very many games that do that. I mean, you know, there are simulation games like Euro Truck Simulator, but they're made on a fraction of the budget. And any other open world game like Skyrim or Assassin's Creed or any of these games is particular. The world is built for the mechanical experience you're going to have in it. So Assassin's Creed's a world full of crowds, not individuals, and buildings with handholds on them and that sort of stuff. And Skyrim feels like this is a fantasy world for having quests and adventures, whereas GTA the world doesn't feel like it's built for a purpose in a weird way. It feels like the world is a thing unto itself. And sometimes I feel like it's counter to the activities you're trying to have in it. Like the instances where there are low walls around a wall that's kind of looks like the kind of thing that in most games you would be able to crash into and it would just smash so it wouldn't get in the way of your high-speed chase. But in this game, no. You're just going to crash into it and stop and be stuck there for a little bit because it's got this kind of this integrity to it and this commitment to it. And that means like you can just walk around without committing any crimes, without doing any of the missions, without doing any of the things you think Grand Theft Auto was built for, and it is still really entertaining and engrossing. Whereas I swear you can't do that in a game like Skyrim or Assassin's Creed or any of these other games. Like if you're not doing parkour in Assassin's Creed as you're walking around, or you're just wandering about in Skyrim, pretty quickly, this isn't a real place. There's nothing to even do here. I can't talk to any of these characters, and if I do, they've got 2 lanes of fixed dialogue, which is the same for 50 of the people who I'm going to talk to in this one town, that sort of stuff. Whereas in GTA, you can just walk about, go to the cinema, ride your bike, talk to some people on the street, buy some stuff on your phone.
Yeah.
Take some pictures with your Instagram app, Snapmatic it's called. Mess around with the filters. Climb a mountain.
It's nuts, like, doing that day in multiplayer where I did some racing and I did, like, flew a plane, did a parachuting race, went to the gun range, watched the back of the gun range, walked up to the, like, thing, started a multiplayer game with someone else who walked in and challenged my score at the gun range. And all this stuff just sort of folded from one to the other. And it's like, games have mini games and they have side modes and competitive things, but it never feels so much like a sandbox. Like, literally, this is just do whatever the fuck you want in here. This is, games with under the theme of what can you do in a modern urban environment and also the desert, the game.
Yeah.
And stealing cars is a really small part of that. It's mostly a convenience feature to get you around. Like,
yeah, and you don't even have to do that. You can take cabs everywhere. Like, systemically, it builds a city in such a good degree that you can just be there and be entertained.
And no one else has done that. And also, like, I think the misleading thing would be to say that it's sort of just that. It's just a simulation, because there's a sort of artistic path applied to everything, from the way the light works to the kind of, the environmental design and the way that kind of sight lines are created down, in particular. There's a place in the docks where if you drive up from the roughest part of the docks, you get a rare line of sight straight through the city all the way up to the Vinewood sign. And so you're looking from, like, the shittiest part of town all the way through town up to the Hollywood Hills, or equivalent. And that's really deliberate. Like, someone's planned kind of how that reveal will take place as you turn a corner and see this thing looming up ahead of you. And the music as well, the selection of music and the way each of it kind of sits alongside the experience in different ways, depending on which radio station you like. It's an extraordinary and I think quite pure creative effort where the writing might be so stumble over itself so much, and maybe, has all this ambition behind it and all this kind of, self-belief and cinematic kind of swagger, and I think it stumbles over itself terribly. Whereas the rest of the game is just kind of magnificent, which you couldn't really say if it was anything else, right? Like, no other game could have a bad, well, not bad, but problematic 40-hour campaign and still be fucking amazing, because it's got 1,000-hour other things that are great, but just harder to talk about because you just waffle on about the time you went speedboating.
I probably played 1,000 hours of GTA 4, and the lion's share of that time was just mucking about in mods, or just walking about the place in first person, because there was a first person mod for it. And the fact that GTA 5 on PC or on the next gen consoles has a first person mode means I will just automatically spend a huge amount of time doing that. Because, even as recently as a few months ago, I was playing GTA 4, just walking about and discovering parts of the city that I hadn't seen before. And it's not that the city's that big, and GTA 5 is a much larger world than GTA 4 ever did, but it's that most of the time, if you're playing the game, it demands that you drive places, because you've got a task to perform. But just walking about, you notice things that you would have driven past without ever knowing, like a real city. And it's astonishing the amount of detail that's in GTA 4, and GTA 5 is a magnitude more detail. So I'm looking forward to just spending the next 3 years, occasionally going to Lad Sontas and just walking around the streets and finding back alleys and shopping streets that I've never noticed before in little stores.
Marsh,
Hi.
what have you been playing?
I played Survarium this last week, which is the thing that the people who made Stalker went on to do. Or at least one of the groups of people who claim they made Stalker have gone on to form Vostok Games. I believe some of them did actually work on Stalker, which may or may not be the case for some of the other people claiming that they worked on Stalker. Anyway, they've gone on to make Vostok.
Only a finite number of people could have worked on Stalker.
And some of them are at Vostok Games making Survarium, which is a free-to-play shooter. Yes, indeed, because of all the things that we fondly remember Stalker for, it is not the fact that it was a free-to-play online team shooter. However, apparently they are also making, as well as being a team shooting gunman blam blam fest, they are also making something more pensive along the lines of like some kind of DayZ survival thing. Well, I mean, I say it's like DayZ, it's like Stalker, but co-op. And also there seem to be some other kind of PvE co-op actual story missions as well that they're working on, or at least purport to be. But for the last year, since they released, I think it was closed alpha, I can't remember whether it was closed alpha or closed beta, but anyway, the last year they've been working on, or they have only released the deathmatch, or at least competitive modes, and it has reached early access in the last couple of weeks. And I struggled to see what was different about it in that year. From Jim Rossignol wrote a preview about it in March 2014. I was playing it April 2015. Couldn't really tell what had mechanically kind of matured in the multiplayer since that point. And there are lots of things that I really, really like about it. The environments are astonishing, like just astonishing. Actually, one of the things I was going to say about GTA, to its credit, is that even when you get those kind of beautiful sight lines that somebody's obviously thought about, coming up from the docks of Iwood, Sign and Hill, those things never look like they've been contrived. They don't look like a piece of concept art, And I think games are getting to the point where they have a problem with kind of delivering that kind of concept arty hyper reality where everything is the perfect fucking sunset over the shattered amazing metropolis thing with a dragon flying over the top as soon as you look up. There's an obsession with delivering the money shot constantly, and actually what you really want to convince you of a world is kind of
the money shot to stop.
Stop the money shots.
I can't see.
You want to be convinced of a sense of place, and I don't think that kind of grandstanding necessarily benefits it. But anyway, Survarium does have a kind of exaggerated world. It's a post-apocalyptic world, not quite the one from Stalker. So, although I think a lot of it's set in Eastern Europe, from like Cologne to the Urals, it's not the thing that has brought humanity to its knees. Hasn't been nuclear apocalypse. It's been revenge, essentially, by the planet, by Gaia, against humanity. Like the Earth has gone too many chemicals, guys. Too many sciences. We're going to stop you.
Is it like The Happening?
I haven't watched The Happening.
Is it like Dark Captain Planet?
We've watched part of The Happening around my house with Jonty. I think you guys gave up partway through.
I don't recall that at all. So it's a green apocalypse. Like the forests have come back to claim the land, basically, and everything is overrun with greenery, and there are strange anomalies, partly created by the failure of human experiments as well. So, like there's a chemical plant that just has this kind of translucent glaze of weird sludge that has now solidified and has consumed the buildings and things. There's another one which is below the Motherland Calls, the giant statue of a woman kind of pointing and holding a sword, big in Russia. That is now kind of standing on sort of this kind of hill that has been just strangely scored and fractured with all these trees that are consuming it, and beside it is this just giant fucking smoking pit. And the scenes at the same time as being kind of really kind of excessive in their presentation of these things, and actually kind of the picture perfect kind of concept art to level design transition. They're also very credible in the way that really only Ukrainian studios seem to be able to do. Like, those buildings just have a certain... A lot of the places are just laboratories and bases and chemical plants and factories and all these wonderful, exciting locales. But obviously they're made exciting by the fact that they've been destroyed in this really interesting way. But each of those places feels like a real habitable place that had function, you know. Each of the rooms has a purpose to it. Some of them, they aren't useful places to go in a multiplayer game because they're just a dead end. But that's where a room would be. There would just be a room there. So you can go in that room. You can then turn around and walk out again. So that I really like that. I think the sense of place is incredible, and they're places which are really mysterious, like not in the reasons that they've been destroyed and the kinds of things you might find there. And Team Deathmatch is completely the wrong mode in which you should ever access those games, those worlds, because you're entranced by their mystery. You want to spend time in them, exploring them and looking at them, and you don't want to just run forward and get shot by somebody you can't see and fall over and start again, which is what happens. I do like the shooting in the game, which is a good thing for a shooter, generally speaking. Like, it feels a lot like Red Orchestra in that the bullets are extremely lethal. You have clumsy kind of bolt action things that go chunk, chunk, blam, ka-chunk, chunk, blam. And you know, it'll take a single shot for you to crumple to your knees and die. Or, in fact, actually, you can get grazed by a shot and you start bleeding. And you have to wrap yourself in bandages to stop bleeding. But if you've used up your bandages, then you're just kind of like, you have 4 seconds to live, and what you do in those 4 seconds is kind of up to you. You know, go and try and make peace with God before you fall over.
I love that in Red Orchestra too. It's my favourite thing about that game is both.
Bleeding.
Yeah, while my Russian soldier cries for his mother.
Yeah.
Or the being on the other side of it, being this person who's just shot someone and having that ambiguity of not knowing whether you've missed them, injured them, or killed them.
Well, in this, and there are reticles which go beep beep beep, which was completely useless mime because this is an audio program, but they go beep beep beep, and they turn red if you've killed somebody. So there's no real ambiguity there, but you don't know how much health they've got left if you've grazed them.
Nor how contemplative they've become.
No, indeed. But it is quite satisfying to get the kind of white boop, 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 which means you haven't killed them, and then for a few seconds later to get the red boop, 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 because they have just bled out somewhere in the corner.
You always remember the first time you kill a man. See the white boop, boop, boop become the red boop, boop. Take his life into your hands.
Yes.
Get 100 points.
I hope he found peace in those final few moments before the boop, boop, boop claimed him.
Yeah.
So those are the good things about it. The problems are that in a year of iteration, presumably, I guess not exclusively on the team deathmatch aspects, because they are working on this other stuff, but you expect, having had this stuff in the wild, they would have recognised any of the problems that they have with it. And some of those are kind of obvious, like no match I have played so far has not started with one of my team just killing all the other team members on his team. You spawn together, just murders everybody, and that happens repeatedly. And they're like, there just needs to be a penalty for that. Put a penalty in. That's that problem fixed. You don't, but they haven't. There's a problem with, you know, if you get bum rushed by the enemy team, they can just kill you repeatedly at spawn because your spawns don't move around the map. Some of the maps are very like not linear, but like there's a single place where the enemy spawn and you spawn at the other side, and you kind of just come together to crash in the center repeatedly. There's no real reason for that, I don't think. Like the maps are wide enough, they have enough kind of interesting spaces in them that you could just rotate the places where people spawn, so that, you know, they're not spawning next to people ever, which is a problem that nearly every multiplayer game has solved since Halo, I think, really. I think Halo had like context of where spawn, so you never spawn next to people. The weapons aren't really balanced. Like I really like the rifle in it, and because I thought it was going to be quite quite slow-paced, methodical shooter. You're crawling through the undergrowth and then plugging people from a distance while unseen and getting the bob. But instead, there's no prone, so you can't really do the stealth that easily. Oh well, actually, that's not true. It's very difficult to see people if you've not already clocked them. So I suppose you can, but like it feels like it's not a stealth game as much as Red Orchestra is or can be, and the Uzi is more accurate and fires faster and is only negligibly less lethal. So there's no real reason to ever have a rifle because you can snipe people with an Uzi from the other side of the map, and you put more bullets into them. I don't know. That just seems like a shooter is kind of about the guns that you have, and I don't know why that's in there.
Was that a commitment to realism in some sense? I mean, because there's the old thing that shotguns from distance are inaccurate, and so waste robot in real life would be fine.
I don't know actually. I mean, one way to test that would be to play with the shotgun, but I haven't yet, so I couldn't say about that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think Uzis are really that accurate from that distance. Like, I don't know if there's bullet drop. There doesn't seem to be any bullet drop on things, so I don't think it's highly accurate in that regard.
It's the thing of just that you only have to hit them once, though. So if you stand at the other end of the field and I've got an Uzi, I can probably spray enough bullets in your direction that if one of them hits you, you'll die.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's only effective if you tap the trigger with the Uzi, so you're actually literally sniping people. And I have some problems with the way that the economy works because I think you could uncharitably say that it's pay to win in as much as you can buy game-changing equipment, which does give you an advantage. The amount of advantage that it gives you is pretty small because all bullets will kill you. But it still does mean that if you are playing with people who are slightly higher level than you, and currently there aren't quite enough players for you to get matched with like an ample pool of people who are all your level, it does mean that you end up playing against people who can just move faster than you and shoot faster than you and take twice as many bullets as you do. But and I didn't find it that much of a problem because the way you should be playing that game is cautiously, and if you use the world to your advantage and you think about where your enemy is and when you want to attack them, then you'll kill them. If that kind of one-on-one confrontation, the kind of problems with the power differential there only become apparent if you've been stupid, really. So I don't know. I don't. The other thing is there's a lot of the whole fact that they've thrown their lot in with free to play means there's quite a lot of just annoying, grindy piffle. So although your bullets regenerate between games, your grenades don't, and your bandages don't. And you need bandages, because otherwise you get taken by the red bub. And so you need to constantly rebuy bandages and rebuy grenades and any other kind of consumable items you have, and then shuffle them across into your inventory between every fucking match. And I just, I think that I see why they've done that. It's because they want to encourage a sense of incompleteness in players. They want players to be in this slightly kind of flustered, frustrated state where they feel like if only they could spend some money, then maybe they would be complete whole people. But I don't think they will ever be able to be complete whole people.
No.
They've got the mortal wound of being a free-to-play player.
GTA doesn't make you whole. No. GTA? Money. Buying things doesn't make you whole. As GTA proves. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say.
You just deal out the red bub until one day you take the red bub.
Yeah.
Crime.
The cycle of bub. Anyway, so I'm quite optimistic that on the basis of their level design and the fact that they have made a single player game before,
some of them,
that when that PvE stuff comes, I will be very excited to play it. But I'm not terribly excited by the team deathmatch so far. But it could be good if they fix all those things. Who knows? Who could say?
Maybe another year is just what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we do questions from questions?
Yes.
Jesse writes, Dear Crichton Crowbar, what is your most embarrassing story that you have had while playing a video game? Mine is when I was staying in boarding houses and was playing Metro, and it was the stripper scene. I had my headphones in and my housemaster, who is a gamer, walked up behind me. And my panic trying to leave the scene, I played it again. He asked me, is that really appropriate? I slammed my laptop down and hid in the toilet for 30 minutes because I was so embarrassed. Regards, Jesse. Jesse, or Jess, perhaps hiding in the bathroom after the stripper scene did not convey embarrassment, but something else.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience with that very same game, actually. I think I was reviewing it for somebody. Or maybe it was the sequel, I can't remember.
It was last night, wasn't it? And it was in our very office.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have a recollection of playing Metro, and I think I might have done that in the demo room. But in both cases, I was living in fear of people walking over and seeing my screen, and assuming that I was a horrible, disgusting grot bag looking at naughty things on the internet while at work.
I had this very recently when I was doing the GTA review, where there's a bit in GTA 5. Well, there's two things. I don't know which one was worse. There's two things in GTA 5 that happened within about half an hour of each other. One is a crappy Franklin side mission where you're working with this paparazzi guy.
Oh, that's so squalid.
Hateful, shitty side thing that doesn't make any sense. Franklin doesn't want to do it. You don't want to do it for some reason. Once you're in the mission, your alternative is to quit the mission or do this stuff. And part of it is you stumble across this sort of like LA starlet having sex in a garden, and you have to film her to get like an illicit sex tape thing. And so you have to keep the camera trained on this pretty explicit sex act. Like, you can't see bits, but, it's not subtle in the way it's presented. It's not like, rustling in the bushes or something. It's banging. That's what's happening. And so you have to train the camera on that for a bit. And I was really conscious of, like, having to do that or else I'd fail the mission, but kind of wanting to both look away in the game and in real life to establish that I didn't want to be looking at it. And the other thing was, shortly after that, I did the torture mission, which meant that I spent a lot of time burning a man's nipples off.
Oh, yeah.
And about an hour after that, I checked my email, because I was all typed out of the game to have a break. Checked my email, and I had an email from one of our people who helps us proof parts of the mag, production assistant, who is freelance, doesn't know us, so sort of just in for the week kind of deal. And the email from her said, hey Chris, this other thing you've written is ready for some captions. I had some questions about it. I came over, but it looked like you were playing a game, so I didn't want to disturb you. And there's a chance that she just saw me driving around the open world, and that's, that she didn't want to disturb me. There's a chance she saw me burning someone's nipples off and thought, that's a game, I suppose. This shows the stress is not necessarily someone who's game literate. They're there to help us make sure we spell things right, not to kind of critique, the games themselves. And, or she saw me tape some sex in the back garden of what appears to be a video game, but could really just be me being a pervert in the office. And it was sort of faintly mortifying, but I made a big deal of standing up to go over and, talk to her about the question she had about the article, the unrelated article. And so I walked over and went, hi, yeah, sorry, introduced myself, oh, how can I help? And sort of just looked into her eyes of like, who do you think I am? Violent? Idiot? Pervert? Or just idiot?
Video gamer.
Yeah, exactly.
All three.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there are situations where I've had the same, simply because there are so many games in which these things are an issue.
Not often with sex, I find. Like, not in an unskippable, not in the like the GTA way where you have to point your camera at it or you fail. Like,
no, but I mean, I remember playing Skullgirls, for example, in the PC Gamer office. And that's a game where you kind of feel like you want to close the curtains before you turn it on sometimes. And it's a beat 'em up. No reason to be like that. It just is.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, some guys were playing New Mortal Kombat in the office just at lunchtime the other day. Like, having fun, and they were doing so in kind of like, the TV was pointed towards a kind of comical coffee area where people from other mags come over to make coffee. And I was momentarily worried that someone was going to turn around and just be like, here are the game assholes popping eyeballs again, like they do in their computer video games.
Not a great ambassador for our medium, that particular franchise.
No.
Yeah. Oh well. Nick writes, evening chaps. I have a 3-month-old whose new favourite trick is to fall asleep on people and nowhere else. As we are also in the middle of moving house, my desktop is packed away and unlikely to be out for some time, leaving me my work laptop. My question is this: what are some decent games that can be played with one hand? Even better, what can be played with my non-dominant hand? I have been playing FTL and Adventure Capitalist, but any other suggestions would be helpful. I am aware there are many innuendo jokes to be made here. Keep up the great work. Nick. You're asking a bunch of people who don't have kids and so have never had this particular problem. But I work with some people who have had this problem very recently on Rock Paper Shotgun, and one of them, John Walker, wrote a post when his kid was just born and was even younger than 3 months and was kind of sleeping on his shoulder while he held it with one hand at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he did a post on RPS just asking the community what games can you play with babies. Over-the-shoulder baby gaming, I think he called it, presumably wanting to dodge some of the innuendo that came up in that email. And the post has 135 comments on it, and there's dozens at least of those are suggesting games which are good for this sort of stuff.
I definitely just want to put a shout out for Endless Legend, a game I bang on about a lot, but it fits this because it's a 4X game with a nice interface. Runs well a little window if that's a concern. And yeah, I don't have a child, but
I sometimes do sit on your knee and you burp me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would rather be playing Endless Legend than doing that. So.
Yep. Anything strategy or turn-based or puzzle, I guess. Anything that's not Twitch gaming. Really, you can play with one-handed. XCOM.
Mouse interface helps, though, right, rather than loads of fiddly stuff or keyboard shortcuts or whatever.
Yeah, this is true. And that's all the time we have for this particular podcast.
Sure pod.
Sorry. Short and sweet.
Shortish.
Shortish, by our standards.
Yes.
Yes.
If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode, you can do so by emailing questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can tweet us your questions at crateandcrowbar. You can leave a question on the forum at crateandcrowbar.com/forum. Or you can follow us on Twitter as individuals, and you can do so by following
Graham Smith, you're pointing at now. I'm at Gonnas, Gonnas.
Or perhaps
Marsh Davis, and my Twitter handle is Marsh Davis.
And I'm C. Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN.
Thanks for listening, everybody!
That was beautiful.